So we'll start with a discussion of a pop quiz which was related to scalars and vector. That was a pop quiz one related to scalar and vector. In the first question, which list contains two scalars and two vectors? So you have to sort out like which one is having two scalar and two vectors. So distance is a scalar, speed is a scalar, time is scalar, but velocity is a vector. So it has three scalar and one vector. When we check the second option, force is a vector, velocity is a vector, distance is a scalar, and mass is also a scalar. So B should be the right answer. What about option C? Mass is scalar, energy is scalar, temperature is scalar, and momentum is a vector. What about option D? Weight is a vector, acceleration is a vector, momentum is a vector, but speed is scalar. So as they asked two scalars and two vectors, so option B is having two scalars and two vectors. The next question is, a boat crosses a river. The boat points at a right angle to the river bank as it travels at a speed of 3.5 meter per second relative to the water. The river current at right angle to the direction of the boat, and the river current is 2.5 meter per second. By drawing a scale diagram or by calculation, determine the speed and the direction. Speed means here we need a magnitude, and direction means we need the angle. How this question can be solved? You can solve this question by two ways. You can use a calculation method, or you can also, you can use a calculation, or you can use a scaling diagram or a scale diagram. So I will solve by both ways. For example, if we want to solve by a scale diagram. So in a scale diagram, first you select a scale according to the magnitudes which are given to you. So example, we select 0.5 meter per second is equals to 1 centimeter. So if 0.5 meter per second is equals to 1 centimeter, then we have, according to the question, we have 2.5 meter per second. So 2.5 meter per second, that will be equals to 5 centimeter. And 3.5 meter per second, that's equals to 7 centimeter. Now, if you are solving by scale diagram, so then we have to draw these vectors. The boat crosses a river and the boat pointed right angle to the river bank. Like, say example, if this was a river bank and the boat is crossing, the boat is crossing the river and at a speed of 3.5 relative to the water. So 3.5 meter per second is the speed of the boat. And the river current at right angle to direction of the boat. So there is a river current of 2.5. If we are using a scale 2.5 meter per second, if we are using a scale diagram, we will draw the two vectors. First, we will draw any one of them you can draw first. And then as we are solving by a scale diagram, so example, first I draw the river current, which is 2.5 or 5 centimeter. So we draw a straight line. So we'll draw a straight line, which is 5 centimeter. Because 2.5 refers to 5 centimeter, which is a river current. And then we draw the second vector from the head of the first vector. We draw the second vector, which is 3.5, 3.5 or meter per second, which is equivalent to 7 centimeter. What about the resultant? The resultant is always from tail of the first to the head of the last. So that will be the resultant velocity. So this will give us a resultant velocity. How we'll get this resultant velocity? So what we have to do? We have to measure this length. So we just have to measure this length using a scale or a ruler. You will measure this length. Say this length is coming out 9 centimeter. Example. It can be any number depending on the correct scale diagram. So example, it is 9 centimeter. So 9 centimeter equivalent to what? So 9 centimeter is equivalent to what? 9 centimeter is equivalent because we selected the scale. We selected the scale. Zero point 0.5 meter per second is 1 centimeter. That we select. You can select like 1 meter per second is 1 centimeter. That's also fine, but that will be a very small number. You should extend the scale so you can draw easily. That's why I select 0 0.5 meter per second is equals to 1 centimeter. So if we have 2.5 meter per second, that's equal to 5 centimeter, and 3.5 meter per second, that's equal to 7 centimeter. So we draw first vector, then we draw the second vector, and from tail of the first to the head of the last, that will be the resultant. Example, the length of the resultant is 9 centimeter. So according to the scale, because as we know 0.5 meter per second we select, that is 1 centimeter. So 9 centimeter will be x. We just cross multiply. So x will be 4.5 meter per second. So that will be the resultant velocity, the magnitude of the resultant velocity. And then determine the angle or the direction of the board relative to the river bank. Because this is a river bank, so we need this angle. So what we can do, you can use a protractor and measure this angle. By placing a protractor at this point, you measure this angle. Example, this angle is 54. So you will say the direction is 54. This is one of the method to solve this question is by scale diagram. Like we scale, select a suitable scale according to the values given, and then we draw the first vector. Any one of them you can draw first, and then you draw the second vector. From tail of the first to the head of the last, you get the resultant. Measure the length of the resultant, and that will be the magnitude of the resultant. And the angle is refers to a direction. This is one way. There's also another way. That is what we can use. We can use the Pythagoras theorem. We can also use a Pythagoras. So in a Pythagoras, you don't have to select any scale. You take both values as same. Like example, if you say this is a river current, which is 2.5. So river current is 2.5 meter per second, and the boat is traveling perpendicular right angle, as they mentioned in the question, that is 3.5. So this will be 3.5 meter per second. So what will the resultant? Again, this will be the resultant, but here we don't measure anything. We use a Pythagoras theorem. So whenever two vectors are perpendicular, how to get the magnitude of the resultant? It will be 2.5 square plus 3.5 square in a root. So if we need the magnitude of the resultant, we base square plus perpendicular square in the root. So magnitude means like the value which we need, the value of the resultant. So 2.5 square plus 3.5 square in a root, that will give us a magnitude of the resultant. So this magnitude of the resultant, when we solve, it will be about 4.3. So this will be 4.3 meter per second. Then we need the angle, because the direction here refers to angle. Like we need this angle. As I mentioned, we need the angle between the river bank and the direction of the resultant. So this is a theta we need. So for a right angle triangle, the theta angle is between the base and the hypotenuse. So means this will be the base. This one is a base, and opposite to the base is perpendicular. So whenever we need the angle, so we use trigonometric ratio tangent theta. As we have the base and perpendicular, tangent theta is perpendicular divided by base. So tangent theta is perpendicular divided by base. So tangent theta, the perpendicular is equals to 3.5 and the base is 2.5. If we need theta, we take a tan inverse. So theta equals tan inverse 3.5 divided by 2.5. So what will the value of a theta? When you work out, it will be about 54. So you will get the same answer. 54. 54 divided by 2.5. 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 54 divided So you can solve this question. You have to, you can solve this question by using a Pythagoras theorem, or you can also use a scale diagram. Scale diagram, we select a scale. Selecting a scale, it's up to you. Any scale you can select, but it should not be so small that you are not able to draw them accurately, or it should not be too large that it does not fit into the space. So select a suitable scale and then draw the two vectors. Any one of them you can draw first, and then draw the second vector and draw tail of the first to the head of the last. That will give us the magnitude of the resultant. And to get the direction means the angle you need. So you will measure this angle according to a question, because we need the angle between the river bank and the direction of the resultant. So river bank is same as the direction in which the river is flowing. That's why we measure this angle. Or for Pythagoras theorem, you just draw the vector, but you don't have to measure any length. You use the Pythagoras theorem. According to that, it's base square plus perpendicular square in a root will give us the hypotenuse. And to get the direction, it is tangent theta, which is perpendicular over base. So the opposite to the angle is perpendicular, and side the angle is the base. Is it clear, this one? How to solve this question? And you will always get two vectors which are perpendicular or 90-degree to each other. So two vectors are always 90-degree or perpendicular to each other. Speed is a scalar quantity, velocity is a vector quantity. State name of one scalar and one vector. So other than, you can mention time, and for vector quantity you can mention the weight. Many examples are there. Momentum, you can also mention momentum, as we discussed in the last session. So this was about the pop quiz, which was related to scalars and vector.